I'm thrilled to have on the podcast Salehe Bembury.
How is it possible that you're collaborating with all these brands?
I have wondered that. I'll be honest with you. Are you supposed to wear, on your collab specifically, the strap in front or in back?
I love that question. Well, I would love to talk about what's seating. Over the years, I've gotten comments on my Instagram where people are like, you just give shoes to your friends. If you made something really cool, who would you give it to?
APTHCRY on the wave. Shoes off, pause, yeah, let's get it. Shoes off, but the vibe stay loud. APTHCRY heat, yeah, I'm flexing in the crowd. Socks on the scene, that's a subtle little flex. Talking drip in the pod, yeah, we setting the next. Mic on fire, we vibing with the crew.
Before we dive into today's episode, I want to give a huge thank you to Riff LA for letting us film in their location. It's an awesome spot. If you guys are in the area, make sure to stop by. Our guest today is one of the most influential designers of the decade. He is well known for his iconic footwear for many brands like New Balance, Crocs, Versace, and he's also releasing his own book, Salehe Bembury, I Make Shoes. I'm thrilled to have on the podcast Salehe Bembury. Thanks so much for being on, man.
Thank you for having me.
Dude, of course. This has been like, as industrial designers, having someone like you in the industry who's literally top of your game, killing it, it's incredibly aspirational for us. And I think anyone out there who's just interested in design.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you for having me here.
Of course.
Secondly, I almost think we need to take a second to talk about industrial design as a major and a craft, because I remember when it was my major, it was virtually unknown, and even now it's kind of like this thing that people say, but I'm not sure they totally understand. When I tell people, when I tell them that's my craft, I think they think I majored in like engineering, or something to do with like buildings. So maybe should we first start talking about industrial design as just like
what
practice?
It is. Let's do it.
Should I begin?
Yeah.
I've always described industrial design as the design of everything except buildings. It's product design, it's understanding of process, it's understanding of shape, it's understanding of material, and it's one of the most versatile practices I've ever encountered because you can pretty much make anything.
Yeah.
So it's special.
That's awesome. So you've specifically have sort of honed in on footwear, but listening to things that you've said in the past, I think you're also interested in sort of expanding into just everything eventually, right? Is that sort of the...
I just think it's more that I have the skills to do so the skills and the tools. So I think at first it was about identifying and exploring my passion, which was and is footwear.
Right.
And then from there, it's really more about the opportunities that are put in front of me and the interest that I have in them.
Isn't it cool, like the industrial design degree or the knowledge of it, not necessarily the degree, is kind of like a superpower. Like you can make anything.
I would agree. I mean, I think one of the reasons why I didn't major in fashion is because I thought that would kind of pigeonhole me into knowing one craft and one set of skills. And even though fashion is an amazing route to take, I just wanted to major in something that would give me options and make it so that I didn't have to necessarily choose footwear as a path, but also give me the skills to pursue footwear to the fullest.
While in university, did you know you wanted to pursue footwear, or did that kind of come throughout organically? Or was footwear your focus?
That was the plan the entire time. But I went to Syracuse. While I was there, I didn't do any footwear related projects. But I think that's what's kind of cool about industrial design is because if you're learning about, I don't know, cutlery or furniture, you in theory could be learning skills or insight that would give you, the tools that you need to work on footwear. So yeah, it really is this major that gives you all the things you need to kill it in the space.
Yeah, absolutely. So what sort of stuff in school? Like I know you went to Syracuse. What sort of, were you doing like the, design 1, design 2, like getting all sort of the basics in, and then of course the sketching and things like that? Were you doing CAD? Like what was sort of the...
It was sketching, it was CAD, it was like 3D software, there's a lot of like quick keys.
Oh, nice.
It was working with our hands. It was working with wood. It was working with foam.
That's awesome.
Hand modeling things, And
did you have to use the hot wire at all?
Absolutely.
Oh, bro.
Sanding,
prism markers, Copic markers.
Those Copic markers are the best. A new set of Copic markers, man. That's just like the best feeling.
Yeah. And what's funny is there's so many people here that probably have no idea what we're talking about, but to ID people, those are some really quality markers. But making things with your hand and hands. And at that time, I didn't really understand that was about, really gaining an understanding of what it was I was making and what the obstacles were going to be. And I really just saw it as like short-term tasks that were given to me by my professors, but I didn't really realize that in like 10 years I was going to understand why I was doing those things, and that's kind of how it worked out. And then I remember my thesis during Syracuse was sushi knives, because I
Oh,
knew
cool.
that if I did anything with a footwear focus, I probably wouldn't have done well, because they knew I was so obsessed with footwear. So I was like, you know what, let me do sushi knives. And I actually ended up making up my insight that I ended up solving for, which
Nice.
strangely was an example of like probably something I was going to have to do in the professional space.
Right.
So I went to a bunch of sushi restaurants. I observed the chefs. I saw how they were cutting things. I made up an insight saying that they needed to hold the handle of the knife in different ways at different heights on the knife to make different cuts.
Right.
This wasn't necessarily true, but it seemed like it could be true. So I was
Absolutely,
like, this
yeah.
is enough for like there to be some kind of like insight. And then I ended up designing these sushi knives where the handles were interchangeable in 3 different stages. So you could like screw off the back of it or screw on the front of it. And it would either be like textured or soft. And these would theoretically aid in the different kinds of cuts that these sushi chefs had to make, which was not necessarily true. However, it was a real insight, and I solved for it. So ended up doing pretty good. And yeah, that really gave me all the skills that I have now and that I'm executing within my footwear practice. You know, like all the style stuff maybe comes from where I'm from, but
Right.
you know, the product understanding is 1000% from industrial design.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So to get back a bit to where you were from, so you were born in Tribeca, is that
Yes,
right?
yes.
Cool. So what first got you into design? Like when was that moment you were like, this is what I want to do?
I think it was more that it was something that I wanted to be a part of. You
Gotcha.
know, I'm a 90s baby, and just growing up and, you know, sneakers being such a big part of culture, hip hop, TV, it was just all around me. And then I knew how sneakers made me feel. And I was, you know, ultimately experiencing what a lot of design does is, you know, evoke emotion, right? And then there was this sense of community, and just being in Tribeca and Soho and that circuit of stores that existed down there. Like, it was just this thing I wanted to be a part of.
Yeah.
I don't know if I necessarily understood that that was design. It was more that this was just like this subculture that gave me a feeling,
Right.
and that felt like unique, you know, and just in this quest of like maybe finding myself throughout childhood and adolescence, it was like this was something I could attach myself to that made me feel different and made me want to explore and discover. So that's what it served in the beginning, at least.
That's awesome. And it's interesting that you bring up the feelings. I find that a lot of the really influential designers, obviously they've got some of that knowledge there, they've got sort of that basis, but a lot of it's like they just fundamentally know what's good and what's not. And I think you absolutely have that. I mean, basically, you know, your incredible body of work, but like, it's really cool that you brought that up, because it really is something that it sort of differentiates the difference makers from people who are just kind of interested in it. You know what I mean? It's that innate sense. And that's really cool that you've got that. And it's cool that you sort of discovered that so early on.
Yeah, it definitely comes from the gut. I have a designer now that sometimes I'm able to articulate why I do or don't like something, but sometimes I like can't necessarily explain it because it is really like this gut feeling.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of just, I think design is intangible, but I think the practice of design is figuring out how to get those intangible ideas to a tangible spot.
And then I guess I'm assuming communicating it to whatever your client is in that case, or
And figuring out what that vehicle is. I've told the story many times, but you know, different platforms, different audiences. When I presented the chain reaction to Donatella, you know, I had to think like, hey, this is someone that doesn't have that much experience in the sneaker space. How do I communicate the idea to her?
right.
Is it the traditional design review of I'm putting up a piece of paper and I'm pointing to this and I'm trying to say, if you can imagine this and there's a shadow here and that is the reason, blah, blah, blah. I was able to utilize 3D printing when presenting that to her. So, and that was a pretty like articulated outsole. So to be able to just simply hand this to her,
Right.
and with no words, she immediately understood what I was trying to communicate.
That's
Ironically,
awesome.
with no words. And yeah, and then it was solved.
That's amazing. I'm assuming was there a little bit of language barrier there? A little bit, or
No, she speaks perfect
Okay,
English.
cool,
Maybe like not perfect English,
Right.
but there was no barrier at all.
oh, cool,
Yeah.
cool. That's awesome, man. So right out of school, you went to Payless first.
Mm-hmm.
What was sort of something that you took away from that initially? Was it, you know, learning how to create? Because I've heard you say before that you learned how to create all different types of shoes because they make everything.
Yeah.
So what was sort of the biggest takeaway you found from that?
Payless was a short-lived gig. I mean,
Okay.
Payless was probably like 3 months. I was just happy to have a job. I was learning how to just like dress in the professional space of just like wearing khakis and wearing
Right.
like an Oxford and like, and this is me coming off like, you know, Jordans and jeans and whatever. So how do I like stay comfortable, but also I'm like adapting to this new phase in my life. I say that they make everything because they do make everything. So it was, I think, indirectly extremely educational for me to be around that off rip. You know, I think
Right.
for me to just step into a space where maybe they only made like traditional dress shoes or something like that, it might have not been the education crash course that I received there.
Right.
At the same time, I was a snot-nosed college kid coming into office as like, I don't even remember what my role was. I was like a intern, assistant designer, something like, I don't remember.
Right.
I didn't matter. I don't even know if there's a shoe that I can point to that I like influenced.
Gotcha.
I did mini CADs and color ups or whatever, but who knows? But at that point in your career, it's not about like getting credit for a shoe. It should be about just learning and collecting a paycheck and
Yep.
just, you know, getting as many like tools as you can into your figurative satchel of your, you know, your career that you bring with you, you know? So that's what that was. It was very, very short lived. But I will say, with where my career has gone now,
Right.
it's a very like poetic story to tell like that as the foundation.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So moving from there, what led you to where you are now? What sort of expedited sort of list of everything that you've kind of gone through and what you sort of learned along the way? Because I've watched a lot of your podcasts.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people who are watching are probably big fans of you and probably sort of learn the story. So I kind of want to maybe get through that and then talk about a little bit of what you've got going on now.
Yeah. So I mean, to like give you the quick version of it, you know, the earlier years of my career were really about like getting a paycheck, getting a job. And maybe the next job that I get is hopefully better than the last, offers new opportunities, and hopefully makes my portfolio and my resume just seem more like versatile and diverse.
Right.
So that's what it was about in the beginning. And hopefully I'm getting paid a little bit more.
Yeah,
too,
true.
right? And then it might have turned into maybe around like the Yeezy years. It was like, wow, like now I'm working on something that's like really special and coveted. So like now that's a whole different opportunity, and learning about confidentiality and intense deadlines, or, you know, working for someone like Kanye West,
Right.
or Ye. And then I guess Versace was like rather similar, because it's like, again, it's like a really special opportunity that I have to like capitalize on very quickly and create product that's impactful very quickly. And,
Right.
be in this like really foreign environment that I'm not used to and adapt to that very quickly. It's a very on the fly, on the run kind of job. And then from there, it was like, now I'm becoming this independent entrepreneur, and how am I going to tackle that? I was recently watching this podcast where they said we go through these stages of life where like when you're a freshman in high school, you kind of don't matter. You're figuring things out. But then you become a senior and you have a car, you maybe have a little bit of money.
Right.
You're like the shit, right? But then you go to college and you're a freshman in college.
And you're back at the bottom.
Exactly.
Yep,
And then
yep.
you're a senior, and then, right? And so, yeah, so just like talking about these like, career life transition points. After Versace, it was like, now I am going out on my own, and my name is on the product, which was initially extremely scary. Just thinking the thought of a stranger wearing my name on their chest, like that's weird.
How has that been for you, seeing people rocking like all these shoes that you've been wearing? Like, well, the first time that you saw someone wearing a Salehe Bembury, like an actual legit Salehe Bembury, what was that like?
In the wild.
In the wild, yeah.
Well, it's funny because to me, people were rocking Salehe Bemburys before I said my name on it.
Right.
So like I may have been a little jaded to that by the time it actually said my name on it, but I do remember at Cole Haan there was something I designed, and I saw someone walking down the street wearing it, and I ran up to him and I was like, I designed those. And it was New York City, so they did not care at all. But no, it's an amazing feeling, you know, the fact that people love my ideas enough to like wear them on their person and bring them with them and travel with them and take pictures and really like cherish them, as I did a lot of shoes growing up. So no, that is not lost on me at all. It's amazing. But I just think initially, because my goals were to just work for a brand, not just, that's a bad way to put it. My goals were to work for a brand. And the whole opportunity of, you know, becoming this independent designer entrepreneur was kind of like bestowed upon me in a sense. And I can share that story if
I'd love to hear it. Yeah.
The wording is weird. But it wasn't something I really wanted, you know, so I kind of like fell into it. So the reason for that is at Versace, I learned a lot about contracts. Earlier in my professional career, contracts were simply maybe how much you were getting paid and like what time you had to be there, right? But then at Versace, the contracts became longer, and there were things from how I travel to the hotels I stay. Oh, absolutely. That's how I travel to the hotels I stay at, to Like really if a contract says like you gotta like show up with Fruit Loops at 9 a.m. and both sides sign, you gotta show up with Fruit Loops at 9 a.m. You know what I mean? So I just started learning about, and not to say that my contracts were remotely ridiculous like that, but that just everything gets covered. And so for one of my contracts, I remember, I think the money maybe wasn't where my team, or by my team, I mean myself and my lawyer, wanted it to be. And so he proposed like, hey, why don't you allow him to do 2 collaborations?
That's
and that was a way to kind of supplement the money that I maybe was not receiving.
This was at Versace.
This was while I still worked at Versace.
So that's sort of how the New Balance thing came, and New Balance and Anta.
Independence. Well, yes, but New Balance and Anta specifically, but just independence of like,
gotcha.
I was like, okay, this isn't necessarily what I wanted, but if this is going to help me make X amount of dollars, maybe this is worth exploring. So now I know I have the freedom to start having some conversations. Anta reaches out. They are extremely interested, and well, there's 2 opportunities. There's Anta and then there's New Balance. They kind of serve different opportunities for me, because with New Balance, it was coloring up existing footwear, legendary existing footwear that the audience is very, very familiar with, but it was a color up exercise. So in turn, it became a marketing exercise. It became a storytelling exercise, figuring out, what story I was going to tell, and then how those colors and materials used would assist in telling those stories. Whereas with Anta, I was designing from scratch, which some designers see that as like an amazing opportunity. Some see it as like a scary opportunity, because all you're staring at is a white piece of paper.
Totally.
And so I saw it as an opportunity because I believed that Anta had a high level of development capability that was going to show the world, at the time, this was my thinking, what it would look like if I designed a Nike shoe, if I got to work at Nike, because that was like the love story at the time.
That's awesome.
So I was like, okay, I have to design a shoe from scratch. I have to create some kind of like proprietary technology story.
Did they give you a brief at all? Like, was there a specific set of guidelines that they gave you?
It was, all I knew was the amount of money being given to me, and that I had to create 2 silhouettes, the packaging and the marketing and all that kind of stuff.
You were doing everything.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Very cool.
It was stuff that I was kind of familiar with doing with my job, you know what I mean? But it was still like new. So yeah, it was really just about creating 2 silhouettes, the technology behind that. We created this thing called Nest Tech. It was inspired by the Olympic Stadium it's either Beijing or Shanghai. I'm embarrassed, I don't know which one. But it was really, and I should probably know the architect as well, but I do not at the time. I did at the moment. I did when I designed it. And so, yeah, so it just had a really beautiful visual of like all of these intertwined, overlapping straps, if you will. And like individually, they were somewhat weak, but together they created strength and resistance. So that I thought was really inspirational for like a midsole language. And then at the time I was also doing a lot of hiking. So I was like, it makes a lot of sense for what I'm doing organically in my life to kind of like bleed into this space of product. And so I created 2 hiking shoes. One was like a low, the other was like it's kind of like a booty high that unzipped and then actually revealed another shoe that was kind of like the next part of the system. So the idea was like you could be hiking all day, and then if you come back to your campground or something, you take off the hiking, I guess, outer booty or shell, and then you have these kind of just like around the house or around the campsite sock shoes, if you will.
What was the testing process like for that? Because that's a very function and visual sort of project.
The funny thing is, and I'm sure we'll get to that, but my work with Puma now is probably the most like test intensive work that I've done, because we're creating footwear for a signature player, a signature athlete. Prior to that, I was really designing the exterior of shoes.
Gotcha.
Truthfully. And then this is something that I actually think a lot of the footwear consumer audience doesn't realize is there are 2 parties that bring a shoe to fruition. It is the designer and it is the developer. So in some instances, I think the audience is always just pointing it at the designer, like, it's your fault that this is that way. But like, at the end of the day, like the designer designs it. They create a spec, which in layman's terms is like maybe like an IKEA instruction manual. I know you guys know that, but just for the audience. And then from there it goes to a factory. And then there's a development person that communicates that to the factory. And in some instances there are language barriers. You don't know what level of factory you're dealing with. So, so that's actually why I've always enjoyed you, covering my work and just having these conversations, because you know what the fuck you're talking about and you have that background. Because like, for one, like, it's an honor to like have anyone cover my shoes, right? So I want to first and
awesome.
foremost say that like it is an honor that if anyone covers my shoes, has anything to say about them, good or bad, really, it's an honor that people are taking the time to give feedback, right?
Right.
But what I found once my footwear started getting covered is that the majority of the people covering it don't necessarily know about footwear from a product standpoint. They know about the culture. They maybe know who Travis Scott is,
Right.
but they don't really know product. And so it's somewhat frustrating to have to listen to sometimes. I remember actually, I got put on the spot by one of your friends at ComplexCon. He like came up to me.
I remember
and
that.
he was like, "Hey, like why like is the foam like?" And he just asked me some like question that like, "Hey," he put me. Do you know what I'm talking? Do you remember?
Yeah,
what he
I do
asked me,
remember.
actually?
I do remember that. I don't remember exactly what he asked you, but I remember the question. I remember being like, that's an interesting question to ask. But I don't remember exactly what it was.
You
I
gave
was
a really
taking-
good answer, though.
You did, yeah.
Did I? Okay,
Yeah.
good. Well, you were there too.
I was there, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
word. He took
It was
me-
actually him. No, I'm kidding.
No,
So I remember what he looked like. He took me wild off guard, and then in those like ComplexCon moments, like I'm already like very overstimulated.
Dealing with
it's
a lot
just
of people constantly,
and
yep.
cameras, and then he just was like, "Let me just put this motherfucker on the spot and ask him some shit about like." So I invite those conversations, but like
Right.
you know,
In the right environment.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's interesting. That's something I've wanted to talk to you about for a while. Is that because, like you said, the people just don't get it unless they've done it. They don't get it, and there's been sort of an interesting discussion about just material qualities that I've seen a lot online recently with shoes. Like people don't understand. I mean, it's mass-produced sneakers, you know, and they think that some quality is better because maybe it's softer or thinner or whatever. They just don't get. There's so many things going on. It's the budgets that you're working with. It's the kind of materials you can source from that area. It's the factory that you're working with. Like there's a million different things. And like you said, there's literally the designer, and then there's the whole business that's like, yo, you got to do this with.
It's a machine.
It's wild, yeah.
And Yachty just did an interview the other day where he addressed everyone not liking his first Air Force One, and he literally was like, "That's all Nike would let me do."
Yeah.
And when I saw that, I was like, I couldn't feel for that moment more, because like in a lot of instances, like these brands will tell you exactly what you can and cannot do,
Right.
and then it is up to you as a designer to figure out how to like wiggle around those obstacles or make things work.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I just thought that was important to say, because there is a lack of understanding of just like how things come to be.
Totally. Is there anything in particular that you see like a lot of comments and you're like, I wish I could just tell them, like obviously something that you can say, but like I wish they would just know this one thing, or I wish there was something that I could explain that maybe they would understand it a little bit better? Is there like a repeated comment that you see a lot?
What was the quote? It would have been so hard to drop this quote right now. It was talking about it was basically, I forget, it might have been Tyler. Like it was someone, he was talking about like the audience that you're talking to. And sometimes that audience that you're speaking to, you have to ask yourself the question of if they are of maybe a certain taste level,
Right.
or intelligence level, or
Yep.
exposure level, or whatever, for you to even be taking that comment seriously.
Mhm.
And so that's the conclusion I've had to come to a lot of the time.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense. We've talked a lot about your design work, but what was your inspiration, or what is your, I guess, recurring inspiration? Is it a particular designer? Is it like Adidas Roms, or is it like nature? Is it everything?
I feel like my answer has never been the most like exciting one. I just design things I like.
That's awesome.
I design from the gut. I design things I want to wear, and thank God my audience agrees.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
So it's something that's happening subconsciously, constantly. And yeah, I would say the most specific place that I could point to is maybe my childhood, because that's when the colors were brightest. And, downtown New York City was an extremely inspirational place. Artists' parents, those things are definitely inspiring at a young age. But at the end of the day, like I look at the things that I've created, and every single one, I was like, damn, I want to wear this.
Yeah.
And it is for me. So I think that's a gift and a curse. Hopefully it remains something that maintains demand.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm so sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, as you look back on like previous shoes, do you see things you're like, oh, like years later, I wish I could go back and tweak?
Oh, always. But at the end of the day, we are we're at the sword of the development calendar, right?
Right.
So there's so many instances where I want to do so many different things, but it's that bigger machine that determines everything.
At some
And
point, it's pencils down.
exactly, and really that is the sign of like an experienced designer, where it's not just about your design ability, it's about your ability to like stay on a calendar and just stay in line with all of those dates and deadlines that make a shoe real, And so I talk about all the time that I'm only designing like 30% of the time, because there's
Right.
so many other things that just like make this thing tick.
Yeah, and I mean, you're
Yeah.
working with, you've got Sponge, you've got your book coming out, which we can talk about in a second, and you obviously have got collaborations coming out. I know at the time that we filmed this, literally, what was it, 2 days ago, you dropped the New Balance 1000?
Yes, yes.
Like, you've got so many different projects going on. How do you balance that?
Javi back there. That's
Shout out Javi.
my assistant. He keeps me organized. And the rest of my team. I think team is really important.
Yeah.
They keep me going. And then I don't know, man. Like I'm not the most like to-do list person. I don't really have an answer for that. And I honestly sometimes think like I always wonder like, is there a sign for when you've run out of bandwidth?
Right.
Like I don't know if there is.
Like a migraine or just like not being able to sleep.
Yeah,
or something.
like, I'm not sure. So
I'm sure
I
it's
just
health
kinda,
signs.
I just will take on keep taking on projects if I enjoy them, and it seems like the result of the work is showing that the bandwidth is still there.
Right.
But yeah, and then this is also something that I used to run home from school and neglect my schoolwork to do. So
Right.
now that I get paid to do it, like people often ask me like what I spend my time doing, and the answer is often like working, and that I feel like traditionally has like a connotation of like negativity of like, oh, they're a workaholic, but no, I like love what I'm doing.
That's
So,
awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it's evident in the stuff that you do. I want to ask about some of your first collaborations. So how much, obviously with Anta, you had a bunch of creative control. With New Balance, you said it's more of a material thing or more of a color study. Did they give you choices in materials? Did they give you choices in like?
Yeah, they have a huge material library,
Okay.
huge color library. I think it's up to the collaborator on how deep they want to dive. And then, and that's not fair. It wasn't just color initially.
Right,
I
right.
mean, like the yurt was like that. Actually, was a theoretically designed from scratch shoe, but it was kind of like a Mr. Potato Head of like mini New Balance components. So it was supposed to be a 574. I'm personally not a 574 fan, so I did as much as I could to make it not a 574 by adding like the bars on the vamp and little things like that. And then the tooling was like from a women's New Balance shoe from like
Really?
the 90s. That,
I didn't know that.
it wasn't exactly that shape, but it had like those like kind of midsole pods. So I took that inspiration.
Did you widen it up a little bit too? Like
Yeah, exactly. So it's like a completely different stance, toe pitch, everything, but it was more just like that concept that I took. And yeah, so that was an example of something being created from scratch, and then the whole, story of the whistle and all that.
I'd love for you to tell. I've heard that story, but for everyone watching, that's a really, really great story. Would you be?
Yeah, so basically, this was the third collaboration with New Balance, and the brief was to create a shoe from scratch that was, I guess, based in the 574, based in the aesthetic of the 574, and then an apparel collection. So we did a small apparel collection that had like fleeces and hoodies and pants and hats and tees, and then we actually had a jacket that had like this removable like Velcro mask.
Oh,
It
that's
was like
cool.
designed during COVID.
Right.
Signs of COVID. And then for the shoe, I was just like looking at the Sam Ross A Cold Wall shoe, the Vomero.
Yes.
And I have a few, and it has this, for those that don't know, it has this giant piece of plastic on the back of it. And with that, it doesn't have any function. And it's still an awesome shoe.
Yeah.
And people accepted that it didn't have any function. And it felt like a very rarely used area of real estate on a sneaker. Like maybe besides like a pull tab, you don't really see that area of the shoe being used. And I was like, wait a minute, like what if I could like put something that actually functioned there? And then just being familiar with like footwear development and knowing that if I introduced any kind of like electronics or anything like that, now it's a $500 shoe. So I was like, what could I do where I actually manipulate the plastic to make it function? And comes a whistle. I thought of the whistle idea before I thought of the why. I was like, I just want to put a whistle on this shoe.
That's awesome.
And then once the whistle idea was like a thing, because I just like cut open coincidentally a 574, stuck in a whistle, hot glued it in, it worked. I was like, what would be the why of the whistle? And then because I had such a at this time kind of like strong outdoor association, I was like, oh, it could be like a safety whistle, And then thinking of like if you were to break your ankle while hiking and you were alone, the amount of energy it would take to yell for help opposed to just simply taking off your shoe and blowing a whistle, like now you're being armed with a tool.
That's awesome.
And then if we're talking about like costs, which I know this is more of a conversation between us, it's not that, a whistle, the cost of making a molded whistle for a shoe is no different than like potentially a big molded piece of TPU on the tongue or something else that could easily already exist on the shoe. So I felt like it was a solve. I felt like it was innovative. It was a first. I love doing things first. That like appeals to me to just be able to say like no one's done this before. I think that's a cool opportunity. And then, yeah, it was cool. And it was called the Yurt. But then the campaign, it was like Yurt because I'm from New York. So that was fun.
Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by APTHCRY. APTHCRY is your sneaker's favorite sock. Osman.
The world's best socks.
That's right. That's right. It's one of those socks you put on and you're like, this is nice. What's your when you first threw on a pair of APTHCRY socks, the 3.0 variant, the new one, how'd you feel?
Super cozy, super soft. I feel like I want to go to bed.
That's right. Except we don't wear socks in bed. I'm not one of those people.
No, that's weird.
You can't
Don't
do that. But hey, if you want to grab APTHCRY socks, make sure to use code SHOESOFF when you order your first purchase from APTHCRY.com, and you get $10 off. So take your shoes off, throw on some good socks, get $10 off with the Shoes Off podcast promo code. Again, Shoes Off for $10 off your first order. With that being said, back to the episode. How involved, I guess, in the engineering of that did you get? Like, obviously, it's because it's a plastic piece in the back of the shoe. Connecting it to the back of the shoe is probably not it's not, you can't just like stitch it in. Like, was that something that you kind of worked with the team with? Is that something that you're like, hey, listen, this is my idea. This is how I want it to look. Can you guys figure this out? Like, what was sort of the process there?
The attachment wasn't that difficult. It was essentially cemented with like some like undermold, and then I might have had an extra stitch. I don't know if it's deck or not. One of the biggest things was the fact that it was designed during COVID. So we were trying to figure out like how we could either prevent or acknowledge that someone had already put their mouth on it.
Right.
Because at that time in the world, if someone like blew your whistle before you blew your whistle, there could be death.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So like we were like, how do we, at first we like put this little like cap on it, but that looked very phallic.
Right.
And then I forget, we had a few things. We had like a shrink wrap idea, and then I think we eventually went with a just kind of like cut piece of paper that both wrapped it, or it was like more so cardboard, and then went into it. So in order to blow it, you'd have to like rip that off. So it was kind of like a safety seal, if you will.
That's cool.
But it's funny because I see yurts in the resale market, and I'm like, damn, like someone's had their lips on those.
Yeah, when I got my pair, the first thing I did was pull the paper off of the back, thinking it was just like, you know, when you got like the paper behind a pull tab on like a Jordan or something.
Yeah.
That's so cool to learn that's the reason. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
it was COVID.
That's awesome.
But yeah, that one was cool because it was like a sneaker. It lived in like sneaker and hype, but then it also was like almost felt like an industrial design like project, you know, like a school project, strangely. So I really enjoyed that one.
It's cool hearing like your process of thinking and designing. Like, it's really industrial design.
Oh, for sure.
It's like, I'm sure not all collaborators have that knowledge of manufacturing of, you know, the way you do, which is really cool to hear.
Yeah. Thinking of the why. And it was almost like designing backwards because I just thought the whistle idea was cool. Like I was like, just like that's because you just think of all the little, like we got like the pump and just the things that have been done in footwear. And again, like the pump, again, there's no electronics being introduced. They figure out a way to make like rubber and like a little like tube and a little balloon pump up the sides of a shoe. Right.
Yeah.
And that's really fucking cool. And then through marketing and storytelling, it's now the pump. But it's really just a fucking bag and a tube.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So I think that's what's really cool, you know?
Do you think that helped, or that like why helped sell it to New Balance at the time? Or were they just like on board from the minute you said it?
The why was we were in a meeting. There was about maybe 6 New Balance people there. And I brought my prototype with me. So I had my like 574 with the hot glued whistle in. And I told a story of a group of friends camping, and then one of them stops to take a photo of some like animals, and then the rest of them leave him or her, and then it's like it's getting dark, and he loses his friends,
right,
and all of a sudden he takes off his shoe. And I'm purposely telling a story slowly like this because that's how I like built the suspense, and then they blow it. And I pick up this like prototype and I blew it, and then they were all like,
that's awesome.
And like they got it immediately, and and then they did a great job of developing it because, you know, it went from like whistle being hot glued into a sneaker to like a proper, you know, product.
The lines are beautiful too. The way it kind of sort of fades into the back of the shoe, and you've got this beautiful curve coming off of it. It's really, really nice.
Only the things an industrial designer would say.
So when you start the design process for a shoe, are you starting with just like a sketch? Are you starting from like a isometric, or are you going for like a top down side?
I think honestly, like, because I have a new designer now that I've been telling him, like, whatever path gets you to the destination is the path you should take. So whether that's hand sketching or CAD or 3D or literally taking clay out and messing around with clay,
right?
Whatever gets you there. I remember I think it's fine to say at Yeezy, a lot of the way that we built shoes there was like Photoshop, like mushing, which I know isn't a term, but that's kind of what it was. It was
Totally.
like taking something from here, taking something from there, taking something from there, kind of mushing it up, adding something. It was almost like digitally painting.
It was super quick ideation.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that makes sense. Yeah.
And so that I had never done anything like that before because I was used to like Adobe Illustrator and like, you know, building it with patterns. And so at the end of the day, it's whatever.
Tangencies and-
Exactly. Whatever tool gets you there.
Yep. That's awesome to hear.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask about your fingerprint. So that's been sort of a common. That's just literally your signature. It seems like on all your collaborations. When did that start, and where did obviously it came from? I'm assuming it's literally your fingerprint, right?
Yes.
When did you decide that's what you wanted to be your signature?
So I guess going back to that story of leaving Versace and becoming this independent designer, I kind of had to ask myself like a few questions of like, what is my visual identity? What is my brand identity? What are my colors? This isn't something I'm like putting on a whiteboard and pinning, but I'm just like thinking like what, you know, I remember even just with doing my first New Balance collaboration and the campaign with Jesse Williams, it was time to do the campaign. Never done a campaign before really. And I was like, fuck, what am I going to make? What am I going to put him in? Like, what is he going to wear? I was like, maybe I'll put him in some acronym or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then a friend of mine was like, you're the designer. You have to put him in you. And I was like, what? Like, and so it was really this discovery process of just figuring out all these new expectations of me. And one of them was the consistency of brand identity. You know, I think all great artists and designers have a consistent something, a consistent hand signature, maybe like a Tom Sachs, or a consistent color, or a consistent pattern, or even just a consistent like essence where you can't even put your finger on it, but you're like, damn, that's, which I've actually heard about my work a lot, where people are like, oh, I can tell that's you, which I find fascinating. And so I really kind of had to ask myself, like, what was that going to be for me?
Mm-hmm.
I was spending a lot of time in nature. I love wood. I love wood grain.
Oh, yeah.
And then I started looking at those lines juxtaposed to fingerprint lines. And I was like, wow, like the fingerprint is something that everyone has. So I get the advantage of people being extremely familiar with it. It's organic, so it feels very like me, very nature, very wood.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like it's unused.
Yeah.
Like I may have seen someone like put a fingerprint on something as like a detail, but as a brand identity, no one really seemed to use it. So initially it started as like this 2D thing where it was like on the logo, it's like on the back of that shoe and it's on the logo. And then for like the Anta logo was like fingerprinted. It was like more of a subtle like 2D exploration. But then when I got the Croc opportunity, I was like, wow, this is an opportunity to explore it 3-dimensionally.
And you went all out. Like it's literally so. Okay, so which part? I've been trying to figure this out. Maybe this is what. So the traction pattern is literally the center of your thumb.
So there's actually 3. Maybe it can 3 fingerprints on it.
Okay.
This is the main fingerprint.
Right.
This is the next fingerprint right here.
Interesting. Okay.
And then there's a third right here. And those are all meshed together, and that's what creates the Pollex.
Were you, your initial idea for this, like to connect all the lines, were you sketching this out? Were you catting it out? Like what was the initial ideation process like
I
for this?
spent 2 to 3 weeks at my buddy's house, my buddy Mikal's house. He's like a 3D whiz.
Mm-hmm.
And that, again, going back to the tools that get you there, I don't know 3D. So I was like, who can I sit with and basically have them be my hands for like a period of time? So we would literally like grind all day, and then we would like drink at night, and then I would pass out on his couch, and then we'd wake up the next day and do it again.
That's awesome.
And also this was like, I kind of like knew that this was a big deal, so I kind of had to drop everything and fully invest because like they never gave anyone an opportunity to design a Croc from scratch. Like, you know, the Post Malone and the Bieber and all those shoes, those were like, you know, skin exercises. Yeah. So this was a big fucking deal, and I had to treat it as such. So it was about 2 weeks at my buddy's house of just like having him be my digital Play-Doh. Mm-hmm. And we got to this conclusion. And then actually, great book plug. There are some images in the book of that process.
That's awesome.
I got to get used to that, talking about the book.
Yeah, tell me about the book. So what was the sort of, I guess let me rephrase that. What let you know that now is the right time for a book? And is there anything in the book that you'd really want the people who are picking it up to kind of get the idea from? Is there anything you're trying to communicate specifically?
I would say there were a few things that made now the right time. One being that I'm starting my own brand that we're not talking about today, but it's in the ethos. The ethos.
Both work, I think.
Thank you. And And then additionally, you know, I've been like this kind of like pioneer journeyman within my career, and I've worked at a lot of different companies, and I thought it'd be nice to just create something that was kind of like a design Bible for young designers, you know?
I love that.
There are so many things that were not taught in college about just moving through the professional space, how to act, how to move, how to identify your obstacles, how to identify your allies. And then just there are so many different types of companies, and I feel like there are a lot of people that don't figure that shit out for like the first like 20 years. So I think just having some kind of like Bible, if you will, that, you know, this isn't by any means like a how-to, but within the stories that I'm sharing and some of the insight that I'm giving, I think that for young designers trying to figure it out and figure out the path they want to take, there's a lot of good gems in there.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Is there anything in particular that like maybe during the writing of the book that you realized about your journey or your path that maybe you hadn't put together?
Well, I think the real gift about creating the book was I obviously had all of the emotions and thoughts on all of those stops in my career then, but getting to look back on them with completely new eyes, like hindsight is 2020, was one of the most special things because, you know, I don't know, you know, working at Yeezy was just like a whirlwind at the time. And
sure.
I'm like working for like one of my idols and it's like surreal, but then getting to look back on that time and I guess analyzing the rule breaking that we were doing and the way in which that we got to a final product, and it was extremely educational. And I really like, I mean, this book is also just representative of like the gems that I was able to take from each of those stops in my career, and maybe that's, I guess, trying to inspire people to do the same, and that's why my brand's called Sponge. You should constantly be absorbing.
Love that.
know?
What was it like starting the brand? Like, how was it kind of just like going into apparel? Like, was that, obviously you'd worked in that industry before, you'd made apparel before, but like doing it for yourself, was that a whole new world?
Yeah, so no, but without talking about Sponge, I can talk about Sponge before Sponge in a sense. So when leaving Versace and then becoming this independent designer, I did the first thing that I knew, which was I'm going to make my own brand. I'll make some t-shirts. Yeah. I grew up on 10 Deep and Rocksmith and Rockers NYC and A New York Thing and Nom de Guerre and Classic Kicks and A-Life and Huff. That's West Coast. Let me keep it East. But anyway, you get what I'm saying. And so I was like, you know, I got to just have a t-shirt company. Of course, that's what I'm going to do. So I create Sponge. It's t-shirts, it's hoodies, it's printed sweatshirts, it's socks. The stuff did very, very well, but I thought the disconnect was that I wasn't wearing it. And the reason I wasn't wearing it is that maybe, I guess, through some of the success I've obtained throughout my career, I like nice things. Yeah. And so I don't really wear Gildan sweatshirts anymore. No hate to Gildan's. It's a great sweatshirt, but I wear a slightly heavier, nicer cut of sweatshirt, if you will. Yeah. And I thought that was a disconnect because I'm a billboard, as are you, as are you, as are you. And those billboards have different value at different times. My billboard is extremely valuable when I'm at Paris Fashion Week, right? And if I'm at Paris Fashion Week and every single thing I'm wearing is something I did not design, I think it's a missed opportunity. You know what I mean? And so I kind of like halted doing the Sponge apparel thing because I wanted to do clothing that I wanted to wear. So I hired an apparel designer. We've been working on some clothes. I love that. I'm sure in the near future I'll release some apparel. Sweet. And then the footwear thing will get discussed like in the very near future. People have seen it on the internet. And I mean the one thing I will say is that I've, made a reputation for myself in this like collaboration space. Like people see me as the collaboration, the guy. They're always like, how is it possible that you're collaborating with all these brands?
I have wondered that. I'll be honest.
We can talk about that as well. But I just think now it's just an appropriate time to continue doing collaborations, but just transition to a new challenge and a new opportunity.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. How are you collaborating with all these brands?
So going back to having learned about contracts, what I learned about contracts also is the non-compete agreement. Right. A non-compete agreement. We should maybe like put the definition here so people like really get understand what it is. But the non-compete agreement essentially is when a brand lists the brands that you are legally not allowed to work with. Gotcha. So all of those brands have them. Some brands have longer ones than others. Right. And so with the partners that I've always had, I've just worked within those non-compete agreements. So awesome. I've always found it funny that people think that I've figured out some secret to work with different brands, but it's simply just working with my lawyer and moving within a non-compete agreement, you know, in the right way.
You're reading it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty much it. Pretty much it.
It's key. People don't do that
It's
anymore.
not genius remotely. It's I'm just trying to like work.
That's great, man. That's great. Okay, so I wanted to ask you. I want to ask you about the future of design.
Yes, tell me.
I want to see what your thoughts are on not only the future of design in footwear, because obviously you're spearheading it, but also just your future, your thoughts on the future of design in general, like maybe in the home. And I know it's a super broad question, but as one of the pioneers of design currently, like where do you see it going?
Future of design. It seems as if, like, I remember when Nike ID like came to be, and I was like, oh no, because like they're putting the secret sauce in the hands of the consumer.
Yep.
But that was just also me being a consumer and just thinking that like the man had to make the shoe.
Right.
And now I think that that's been multiplied by like 1,000 with AI and 3D printing and all those kinds of things. So now it seems like the magic wand has been put into the hands of the consumer. And what initially made me think that that was going to level the playing field, it's really about the person who's waving the wand.
Totally.
And so now it seems like there's going to be way more just like oversaturation of just stuff. And it's really now going to be maybe more a conversation of like taste and execution and intention, maybe, because I feel like everyone's going to, you know, like someone that has no artistic ability now is able to be an artist.
Do you think that's hurtful or helpful for the design world? Or
Yes. And that's a yes to both. Because, I think in some ways it's hurtful because someone that maybe is actually truly talented, now their work can't get seen, you know? I think it would be really difficult today to like get noticed. Or no, I don't want to say it would be really difficult, but compared to when I was trying to get noticed like 15 years ago, I think today is so much harder because there are just a lot of people faking it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fucking people faking it.
Totally.
And I feel like in my time, I feel old saying in my time, but in my time, it was like way harder to fake it. You either like had it or you didn't. And now like you can fake it for years.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know what I mean? And
It's
so
nuts.
I think the future is just going to bring a lot of bringing creativity and ability into the individual, which is a very positive thing. But then also it's going to dim the light of a lot of talented people.
I agree. And I think in a way, this whole sort of personalization revolution is similar to what happened with, video, like as a YouTuber, like something that I've seen, like people don't watch as much TV anymore. They're watching YouTube videos. And in a lot of ways, that's been good for people like myself who've been able to make a career from it. But also like, there's these filmmakers who make these amazing, incredible films that just, maybe they can't get the funding anymore. Or maybe they're not able to, and they're these incredibly talented people. So it's so interesting to see the way that people have to try and create the same sort of art, but in a different way or a different different kind of get it out there in a different way.
Well, you got to evolve because I had a friend in Paris recently say that you either go with time or you go with time. So it's like you either evolve or you're going to get kicked the fuck out.
Yeah.
And that's actually kind of been my relationship with AI. Like initially when I was introduced to AI, Mark Echo, I probably told this story as well. Mark Echo came to my studio and he like pitched me on some AI company he was working on, and I was not familiar at all because I thought it was going to make me obsolete.
Right.
And he was like, just try it out. So I type in like outdoor croc version 2 made for the outdoor, something like that. And in 3 minutes, it was like, and then it just showed me a pretty good fucking design.
That's wild.
And you just asked me how long it took me to make the croc. And I said 2 weeks. And in like 3 minutes. And I was like, get the fuck out of my office right now, But then after some thinking, I thought about every job that I had. And every job that I had someone that was maybe like a 60 plus, and they didn't use Photoshop and they didn't use Illustrator. They just only sketch. And you could tell that when that transition happened, they were like, nah, I'm not doing this. This is like, I'm going to stay analog.
Yeah.
And because of that, they're slowly becoming a dinosaur and slowly becoming obsolete.
Yeah.
And let's just call that person Larry. I don't want to be Larry. I want to continue to evolve and grow with whatever the fuck is happening in my space. And so I've learned how to use AI as a time saver and a bandwidth extender over a creativity replacer.
And it makes sense. New tools are scary. I think that it's something that a lot of people in any industry, whenever like the new thing come, like imagine you're a factory worker and you're getting replaced by robots. Like that's a scary thing. And obviously some jobs it is, it can mean the end of their job, but for designers, it really is like like you said, it's a challenge you got to overcome.
Listen, I'm from New York, and I grew up with there being two people inside of a little booth, and you'd give them money, and then they'd give you a token, right? And then one day, there were these silver machines with colorful little like squares and circles on it, and those were called MetroCard machines. And that was like AI, like 20 years before AI. Right. And I didn't know any token people, so maybe I didn't like feel the impact. But that was literally a machine taking a human's job. Yeah. And so it was, it's going to continue to happen. So it's really a matter of how you can like use the tool to your benefit.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Kind of backpedaling a bit, because there was a question I wanted to ask that I forgot to ask earlier. When it comes to like sneaker leaks, as someone who like reports on upcoming sneakers, like if you see maybe one of your pairs, like a photo of like one of your upcoming New Balances or Crocs or whatever out there, like what's your initial gut reaction? Are you like, oh no? Or are you like, oh cool, like it's building hype for the...
Like a leak picture?
Yeah, I remember, a few things. One, I remember I learned this at Nike like maybe 10 years ago. Someone at Nike told me that 80% of their leaked images, they take. And I was like,
that's what,
right?
They take to put out?
Yeah, because if you think about it, it's like if leaks are going to happen, you might as well control it.
I mean, it does make sense because you look at a lot of these sneaker websites and they know about the Jordan releases about a year and a half in advance. You're like, how do you know that? Like, how do you know that the bread is coming back in 2028? Like, that's insane.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the fact learning that a lot of leaks are like executed. And so if you think about it, like all these pictures we'll see of maybe like Kanye's on an airplane and then like someone's taking a picture right here and it's low resolution, like that was most likely, like, I don't know, like don't quote me on that, but that was most likely like executed. And so for one, it's like maybe using it to your advantage. Right. I used to get like emotionally invested, but I'm realizing that it's kind of out of my control. Perfect example, actually. Actually, no, can't share that.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I can't share that. I can't share that.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, it's similar to like maybe Virgil's perspective on like bootlegging. It's like if someone likes your shit enough to bootleg it or leak it, that must mean it's working. Right. So yeah, I think that's really the only way that I can look at it. And everyone's got to hustle. So.
It makes sense. So like when someone shows up to like maybe a Knicks game front row and they got the new Salehe's on or something, is that all? That's all on purpose, right? I'm assuming, like, or any shoe. Not just using your shoe as an example, but like that's all like that's. They seeded to certain people, and this is I'm asking. I don't know for sure. They're seeding it for that, hoping that will happen, right?
Ooh, I would love to talk about what seeding is.
I would love to. Let's hear it.
Let's talk about seeding. So, okay, so I remember when I was like a younger designer and like social media was kind of just starting, and I would see people getting free stuff. Yeah, I was like, oh man, I cannot wait till I'm cool enough to get free stuff, right? But then I started getting free stuff, and I was like, man, I'm so cool, right? But then I quickly realized that, no, I'm not so cool. Or maybe I'm cool, but no, I'm not so cool. What these brands are doing is they're utilizing my platform to help promote their product, right? But it's a great little like exchange, because in exchange for me utilizing my platform, which is really just me posting a photo, if I care to, in turn, I get a free pair of shoes. So it's a pretty solid deal. It's funny because, over the years, I've gotten comments on my Instagram where people are like, you just give shoes to your friends, just your friends. Well, what I say to that is, A, if you made something really cool, who would you give it to? Yeah. Your friends, one, right? And then two, coincidentally, a lot of my friends are influential, like impactful, cool people that are ultimately going to help me sell the shoe to their audiences. And again, it is that like trade-off of like, I'm not expecting them to do that. They don't have to do that. There's no social agreement. But if they do, awesome. Or maybe they wear it and like they're just at like an ice cream shop on a Sunday and like the 10 people outside the ice cream shop they influence and I don't even know about it. But it's just kind of like this expectation that at some point they will be influenced. So seeding is an operation, which I don't think a lot of people realize. I think they think it's like some like circle jerk. Yeah. Actually, it kind of is a circle jerk.
It's interesting you say that, because I've heard whole discussions on like on Twitter, on YouTube about like different things and like how do I make my way into the seeding circle? Like how do I do this? How do I do that? But I really like the way you said it, because the way that you're doing it is authentic. You're seeding it to people who you obviously want them to wear that, but they're going to wear that if they authentically like it. And in your 100%. Case, I mean, they seem to almost all be wearing it, which is awesome. But it's really cool that you brought that up, because it in a lot of ways it is just marketing, but at the same time it's also giving your friends something cool that you made.
Absolutely. Like that's the simple of it. It's like, yo, this is my buddy. Of course I'm going to give them to him. But then it's like, oh, my buddy also just won a Grammy. Yeah. And he's performing tonight. So like I should probably get him a pair of shoes as well. Right. So like, oh yeah, to all the people that give those made those comments, it's like, this is a business. Exactly. And I'm trying to positively impact my business in the best way possible. So like, I'm not concerned with your comments about like, why do you just give it to your friends? Because there's a very like intentional plan, and that's why. So, yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Awesome. Let me just double check. Make sure I went through all the questions. Dude,
Yep.
this is great, man. Thank you so much.
Of course,
I'm
dude,
loving
of
this,
course.
man. This is so great. You got anything in particular you want to ask?
I do actually. Going back to like when you get like a new silhouette,
Mm-hmm.
like the Croc or with stuff with Anta. Do you like check in with the brand like every week to just show like, hey, this is what I'm thinking, or do you like go off for a month or however long it takes and then just show them the final?
I think it's like a trust thing. So like with some of the brands, like with campaigns, they would give me the budget, but then like 4 or 5 representatives from the brand would show up on the day of the campaign and watch it happen and make sure that all the things were happening. But now with a lot of my partners, they'll just give me the money and like let me go.
Because you've got that established body of work now.
Exactly. And so, but that was even with campaigns, but even with
cool.
product, yeah, a lot of the time they'll give me deadlines, and you know, I stress to a lot of the brands I work with that I'm not the average collaborator because I'm classically trained in this. So whereas they would normally maybe like walk a collaborator through the color library and explain what the difference between gloss and matte is, it's like we don't got to do that. And so I think there's just trust from resume and portfolio, and I speak the jargon, and so I think that helps me that I'm like not only a New Yorker, but I also like can speak like nerd ID talk, which is important in a lot of rooms, you know. And so it really varies based on the different brands, but it all comes down to trust.
And how do you deal with like pushback? Like if they don't like something you did or want to change it for whatever, maybe it's cost or.
So when I was at
reasons.
Cole Haan, we worked on the shoe called the Lunar Grand. Are you guys familiar with it?
Of course.
Yeah. So that was like a really, what's the word? Like, I don't want to say it upset a lot of people, but it made a lot of people uncomfortable. And there were a lot of people internally that were uncomfortable with that shoe. And so I'll never forget my boss, Jeff, at the time, who was the creative director of that project. We sat down with all the people that like the higher ups that were opposing it. And they were like, this is why like dress shoes aren't this color. That's crazy. And this, that, or the other. And then like, he just quietly pulled out the brief. And this is where I kind of learned like some of the like Jedi shit that goes on behind the scenes. He quietly pulled out the brief and he was like, you guys said it needed to be flexible, right? And they were like, yes, we did.
Yeah.
And he was like, you guys said it needed to be comfortable, right? And they were like, yes, we did. And then he went down all the brief, like checked boxes, and we checked them all. And then he just like got up and left essentially. Cause that's like, for a designer, it's like, you've asked us to solve a design issue. We've solved it. Now we're just ultimately dealing with like just human discomfort. And that's not what we're being paid to do.
Right.
So, I think it's really just about like, like once the design is done, just kind of figuring out like how to have that conversation and make it clear that you've solved for what was asked of you. Like even with the Croc, like, you know, that's such a innovative new shape, but there were a lot of things on that shoe that we had to maintain so that the audience knew it was a Croc. And with that specifically, it was like the strap, the holes in the front and the toe pitch, things that maybe a really focused Crocs consumer identifies, but for a lot of people, it's really just like a subconscious detail that maybe you don't notice, but part of you does. So it's really about just like it's really like a college design problem. It doesn't change in my eyes. It's really just like the consumer changes, the maybe budget changes, but it really is just like being at school and then having to solve.
That makes sense. I mean, as someone who like honestly was put on to Crocs by your collab, like it was really cool finally having a pair of shoes like this. It looked good, but also was comfy. Like it was great to have that sort of like everyday shoe that I could throw on. Also, we were having a discussion this morning. I want to ask you the official way. Are you supposed to wear on your collab specifically the strap in front or in back?
I love that question.
And is sports mode the actual term?
So it's so funny, but this is almost like the like lifespan that is like product, the lifespan of your product. So when I designed it, like all Crocs, I imagine that the strap was supposed to sit in the back.
Gotcha.
And that's why the logo is right side up when it is as such. And then we started selling the shoe and people started doing that. And like the stubborn designer in me was like, no, you're doing it wrong. But at the same time, it was very cool to see like how the audience was like adapting the product, adopting the product, or adopting it and then adapting it to how they dress or wear things. So I thought that was actually pretty cool because I had no intention of it being that. Crocs does have sports mode where if it's back, it's sports. I wasn't thinking that at all.
Right.
but I think that's what makes, it's kind of like, maybe what's an example of just the culture doing what they want. Maybe it's like, maybe one of the first examples is like people not wearing laces in their shell toes and just letting the tongues flap out, right? I'm sure that in Germany they were like, what the fuck? But that was like style, know, and it really like identified a moment in time. So yeah, that's a part of just like what happens with the product,
That's awesome. It's so interesting. Like, what you're doing is not only creating art on something, but it's also creating a functional thing. And it's so interesting. Kind of, I'm sure you deal with like, with the Crocs, I'm sure sizing was a thing. You had to figure out that because it's a different shape than the original Crocs.
Yeah.
Like, and with the New Balances, it's, a lot of these, like the 2002 Rs, like they're already like an established shape. But, with the 574s, it's like, okay, well, that's a whole new shape. Like, what's that process like of creating something that has to be worn? Does that literally triple your workload? Is it something that just basically makes it 4D design versus just...
I don't know. I mean, I just, as a designer, again, going back to being like a trained designer, I feel like if it doesn't work, it's not a shoe. So like I've seen, or if it doesn't work, it's not a design, like it's art, right? So I've seen so many shoes that they look cool, but they don't really like function as a shoe. So I don't like take it seriously.
Right.
So, I mean, for the Croc, the first thing we established were there was like unchangeable signature details, which was the strap, the holes, and the toe pitch. And then from there, I remember I was like doing a quick study on the areas of real estate of the foot that I thought was appealing and that I did not think was appealing. An example of an unappealing area of the foot is the pinky toe.
Yeah.
No one wants to see the pinky toe.
Yeah, you don't want to see that
So
popping outside.
I was like, let me not put a hole there because you don't want little like raisin pinky toes popping out of your Pollex, right?
You don't want that LeBron toe being seen out.
I don't want that was Seth Fowler, not me.
Shout out LeBron, big fan, big fan.
And so like it was just about like identifying like I guess the sexy parts of the foot or the unappealing parts of the foot, and yeah, just trying to figure out like what would be not too polarizing for the existing consumer, but then at the same time new and fresh for this like potential like sneaker consumer that we're trying to get to hop over the fence. So it was really like an exercise of restraint. It was an exercise of balance, and then also it was like, do I want to wear it? Because I make everything for myself. I was really trying to like create something for myself because that is my strange like litmus test for my work.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you design and it's beautiful and you think it's perfect, but then they're like, okay, well, shoot, it's not going to fit our budget. It's not going to fit the brief.
Yeah.
Like, is that something you have to deal with a lot? Or is that
manufacturing constraints?
Or like draft angles, things like that?
I would say that that's almost something that you deal with before you put pen to paper. Like I always kind of like to know the restraints. I actually get rather annoyed when like, whether for a campaign or a project, a company's just like, just go.
Yeah.
I'm like, but what's the budget? Like, when do we have to finish this by or whatever? So I think it's really just about, being familiar with the bullet points of the project, maybe writing them up big so you know what it is you're tackling, and getting to work. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
How do you start personally? Like when you get the brief or whatever, what's your first?
Yeah, so I you know how there are like 7 stages of grief? I have 7 stages of creative opportunity. So
7 stages of brief.
Ooh, I like that a lot. I like that a lot. So, yeah, that's good. And so my first stage is like imposter syndrome. I'm like, fuck, they're gonna find me out this time, right? Like I'm an imposter,
This is the
like
last time.
And then the second one is like, it's like I'm inspired. I'm like, no, like I can do this, and like I don't know if I can call out what the 7 stages are, but it always ends thus far in like successful product, things that people like. So often when I'm met with that imposter syndrome, I'm actually kind of happy because I know that I'm like on the journey to making something cool because it means I still care.
Right.
And so again, there's no one way that I start. There's a project that I'm literally going to Brazil for like in a week, where it was just all 3D. Like I just like sat with a guy and I was like, this is what I want to do. It was very conceptual, and then we just kind of sat for a few hours and like knocked it out. Sometimes I'm sketching, sometimes I'm creative directing my designer. I have one footwear designer, and I don't touch it at all. But at the same time, my hands are all over it because I'm telling them to do this, this, and this. So it really, and that in itself was a pretty uncomfortable transition because I was very used to being the one to click, draw, and now there are projects out there that I did not touch or click, but at the same time, it's my brainchild because I told them to do every line on it. So it's like this weird, like dissociated yet very intimate relationship with product that I'm still kind of getting used to.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I mean, I could literally sit here and talk to you for hours because I love your product. I love your design process. I love the way you think. Check out the book if you guys haven't yet. I think by the time this episode airs, it should be out, right?
Yes.
October 14th. is when it
October
releases?
14th.
Pre-order
Where
it.
can they get it?
They can get it now. It's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, pre-orderable. And then on October 14th, it'll be available on my website.
Let's go.
SaleheBembury.com, not BeASponge.com. I'll be talking about that switch soon. And yes, everyone support me, please. I need your support.
One last thing before we go. Is there anything you want the average sneakerhead to know about Salehe Bembury?
That I used to be you. I used to camp out. I used to be on Nike Talk. Nike Talk was like a website that we found everything out on. It was like Instagram in one website. I used to obsess. I still obsess, but not as much as I used to. This shit is in my blood. I am of the cloth. So I appreciate everyone's support. And stay tuned. More fun things to come.
Well, thank you so much for being on here, man. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for watching. See you in the next one.